So welcome everybody to the C&I committee. Our first presentation today is around visual performing arts. This is part of the annual updates that our content areas will provide to the C&I committee. So I'm going to introduce Susan Thomas, who's our elementary curriculum specialist for visual performing arts, and Kim Hirschman, who's our secondary curriculum specialist for visual performing arts. And I believe, Susan, you're going to kick it off, so I'll hand it over to the two of them. Thank you, and thank you for being here. Oh, you're going to be first? All right.
I'll give it over to Kim.
Right.
All right, good morning.
He just said he'll be there momentarily.
Okay, you want to take a little pause?
We're good.
Okay.
Good.
He said go ahead and start.
All right, great.
All right, so I will go through and highlight some things that we have going on for next school year in each of our areas of secondary visual and performing arts. So our first area is secondary visual art. So in addition to our change of scheduling model at the middle school, we are introducing a new course called Digital Media Arts. We did pilot lessons for this course 2 years ago, and then this year we piloted a few units, and now we're in curriculum development to roll out a version of the course for next school year. So digital media arts encompasses things like audio, visual, multimedia projects, so that students are creators of multimedia versus just consumers of multimedia. We continue with our new semester offerings for visual art. These aren't new courses, it's just taking our traditional year-long model and dividing it into semester options for students and refining the curriculum. So all students taking semester options receive all of the National Core Art Standards in one of the semesters. We are in year 2, heading into year 2 of our summer middle school visual art camps for middle school, and this was through ESSER funding. For next year, we are doing a pilot of our first dual enrollment art offering at one of our traditional high schools. So we have Art 113, which is pottery, being offered at Walkersville High School. So they had enough enrollment to offer 2 different sections of that pottery course for next year. And this summer, for all of our content areas, we're revisiting our benchmarks in our summer curriculum writing workshop. So things like, does it serve the purpose that we want it to serve? Are the assessments authentic? Are they measuring what we want them to measure? And is there anything that we need to change in those areas?
Kim, or before you go back, the pottery course was the one where in the classroom we needed to provide some additional funds to bring the classroom kind of up to standard for that college level course. So you want to highlight some of the things that we're purchasing for that classroom?
Sure. So for an art course, it's beyond just a textbook. So there isn't a textbook. That's the FCC equivalent. The equivalent is really the art making space. So for Walkersville High School, we had to order a couple of, I think 4 pottery wheels so that we had enough for the students to have their studio time. We ordered a coil extruder, which I think Dr. Cuppett could talk a little bit more intelligently about that one, what that one is. And we ordered glazes, clay, the supplies the students would traditionally need to take that course that they would have access to at the FCC studio. We needed to have all of those materials available in the workspace at Walkersville High School.
So for those of you that are interested, the coil extruder is like, you remember the little Play-Doh thing where you put the clay and you push it and it makes stuff come out? Okay, so it creates coils, and it's just, I'm sure, industrial grade and probably not nearly as colorful as the Play-Doh version, but we did feel that we needed to have one in the classroom. So this is really exciting. This, you know, as we continue to look at dual enrollment offerings and under the blueprint, you know, that's one of the 4 CCR pathways. And obviously the program started in core areas like English and mathematics and social studies, but we do see that visual performing arts, we have a couple of courses already at our AFA. And so this will be our first course in our general VPA courses. So we're very excited about it. We're excited to see the student interest there. And so it takes a little bit of work to make sure that it will kind of meet the college level standard, but we'll be excited to see it in action.
Yeah, and ceramics is a wildly popular elective course. So this is a great opportunity for the students that take ceramics 1 and then they want to continue in ceramics, and now they can get a credit that would work as their fine art credit for FCC towards an associate's degree, or even count towards their arts pathway if they're working towards a portfolio for college application.
Do you guys have a kiln on site?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
For firing? That's awesome.
Yeah, all of our high schools and middle schools and elementary schools for the most part have kilns. Keeping up with repair and replacement can be a challenge sometimes, but both of our specialists here are on top of that, and know where something's kind of on its last leg and where maybe repair isn't the way to go. We should just go ahead and replace those. So we've done a number of those repairs and replacements over the years. Thank you, Kim.
And Mr. J is on, so we've got him. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. J. Can you hear us?
He was talking.
He says, I'm in the meeting, I can hear, but I cannot see.
Let's see. This guy, where's our guy? You may have to go out. We'll see. Check the button. Sure it's not too small. Okay, go ahead, Kim. I think you can continue.
So in secondary dance, which is only at the high school level, we are looking to continue to increase the presence of our unified dance programs in high schools. Right now, we have unified dance at Tuscarora High School and Urbana High School, but it is an option that our schools with dance programs that are looking for an elective option for students in the special ed department to collaborate with general education peers in sort of a mentorship style, that is an option. So we continue to advocate with principals that is something that they could consider putting into their schedule if the enrollment numbers dictate that it's a possibility. We are also revisiting our all-county dance selection process. We've had all-county dance going into our third year this year. And what we're seeing is sort of this natural students who take dance extracurricularly in addition to in school are more successful in the all-county dance process because they get that private studio dance experience. But we want to make sure that all of our students who are accessing dance in our public school systems have an equal opportunity to be as successful and be highlighted in an all-county representative way. So we're going to talk about that this summer and what we can do to have a more equitable process or maybe some sort of dual process where we highlight more students. And again, we're looking at our benchmarks in summer curriculum writing. In secondary theater, again, with the middle school level, working on revamping our curriculum to fit into the semester model. This year, we had a new partnership with FCC for them to host our high school drama festival, which was a huge success. The students really loved it. We had small groups perform on stage from our schools that have theater courses, and then students also had the opportunity to perform monologues or duos for feedback from professional adjudicators. So students who are working towards, again, college portfolios, want that for their resume, are auditioning for community theater, local theater, had a really great opportunity on stage at FCC. Again, we're going to work on our benchmarks this summer, and moving forward, we are investigating the possibility of bringing in FCC Theater 101 as a possible dual enrollment offering at some of our high schools. And in music, secondary music, we are looking at our middle school assessment program for our ensembles. We've seen with the change in the scheduling model for next year, significant growth in our band, choir, orchestra numbers for the middle school. So we're looking to put something in place that's going to help teachers manage the numbers and reach the individual students and sort of keep track of the students' progress and create a more equitable situation where what a student is being asked to do at one school more directly mirrors what they can be asked at a different school in case we have students that move throughout the district and sort of get everybody more reading on the same sheet of music, if you will. And we are entering year 2 of a pilot project that was very successful this year. We had a teacher group that worked collaboratively to provide an extra experience for our city middle schools. They called it the Frederick All-City Honors Middle School Ensemble. And that was a collaboration between Tuscarora High School, TJ High School, and Frederick High School, and the theater pattern. And they provided an extra opportunity for our students to rehearse and perform. So we're going to go into year 2 of that program. And just some celebrations. So FCPS had 12 students participate across 5 Maryland All-State ensembles this year. And we had 22 of our ensembles receive superior ratings at our local adjudications in FCPS. And we will continue to investigate the possibility of FCC dual enrollment offerings in music. All right, specifically focusing on our Academy for the Fine Arts program. They are also doing a summer camp this summer for grades 3 through 5. They ran this program last year through ESSER funding, and this is going to be year 2 through ESSER funding. And they're going to add Parkway Elementary this year. So they will serve, I believe it's 4 schools for that program, grade 3 through 5, where students come and get to explore each of the arts areas, music, art, dance, and drama. They get guest performances, and it's just a really great way for them to see what an arts pathway could be like as they move on in their career. In the future, we are going to work on growing the digital arts as a separate focus area of the Academy. Right now, we do have visual art as a focus, and a student can select to do a digital portfolio, but knowing where we want students to be post-CCR, we just want to really investigate what we can do for that student that's taking that pathway at the Academy for the Fine Arts. And Jonathan Kurtz, who's the coordinator for the Academy, sent a survey out that went to alumni, parents, alumni students, high school administrators, current high school arts faculty, and just some highlights that I wanted to give to the board was the survey indicated that 90% satisfaction rate for our alumni that graduated from the program and 96% for parents of alumni. So huge satisfaction coming out of the Academy. 90% of those alumni attend a 5-year college or university. Many of our arts programs are 5 years, not 4 years. And then 85 are pursuing a career in the arts outside of a college university program.
Any questions for secondary visual performing arts?
Just one question. What are your numbers in attendance for the Fine Arts Camp? The one that's the summer camp?
The summer camp for the Academy for the Fine Arts elementary one,
Yeah.
they're capped at about 100 just because of staffing limitations.
Okay.
So
Is there an application process for that? Is that
there is a process that they put together in collaboration with the grant office because it's ESSER funding. So we do try to target certain populations first and foremost. So there is a process working with the school-based administrators and Elevate staff to identify students.
okay? Mr.
He
J,
could hear us. I
can
think
you hear us?
he could hear us. Is his volume going to be there?
We're gonna switch it. We're gonna put,
I don't think you need to hook all that extra stuff.
I did hear something a minute ago, though. I might need to get out of this one. Oh, no, if I get out of this one, he can't get out. It takes him out of this one. Mr. J, it did. I can hear myself echoing.
He's talking, we can't hear him.
You could also text it. You want to bring them up on. Yeah.
So that was not my idea Give credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
I'll ask him.
Jeremy also said a little bit ago that there was problems with the Wi-Fi.
Yep, because it was just a black screen.
Mm,
It was just a blank screen. It should have been.
It might be going in now.
It's not picking up these speakers at all.
Any kind of auxiliary device.
Yeah. Oh, it'll come through these speakers. It's not picking up these speakers at all.
And we could get out of this
He
one,
says
we
he
get him
can
on this
hear,
one.
and he says see somewhat. Keep going. So I said, we cannot hear you. You can text your questions or comments. And he said, sure.
Okay.
Let's go with that.
Okay.
We'll keep this
I
one.
unplugged their speakers. He might be able to talk through this, through the laptop.
Okay, wait.
Right here.
One more time, Mr. J. We heard you for a minute there.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for your efforts. Appreciate that very much.
So Mr. J, did you have any questions about? Let's mute that. Right here. Mute that. There we go.
Thank you so much, though.
Could you repeat that, Mr. J, one more time?
So in the time, I'll hold my questions right now.
Okay.
Thank you so much, though.
Okay, so we'll go over to elementary. Susan?
Good morning, everyone. I appreciate your time. I'm happy to give some updates regarding the elementary general and instrumental music and visual arts program. And this slide is particularly timely because as a curriculum department, we've had opportunities this week to really talk about data and assessment and where we can move forward in my 3 departments. And one of the curriculum writing workshops is titled Assessing with Intent. That what is it that we are banking as far as data goes, and not only that, but what do we do to help inform our instruction? So we're not only collecting data, but then how does that drive where you go, which is very different from school to school. And you know that also still references when we were virtual, that at the elementary level, the amount of seat time in visual and performing arts was very different from school to school. Because in part that administration made decisions for the best interest of their students, which I completely respect. But when we came back to a brick and mortar setting, we're finding that schools aren't typically at the same place that we've always been for years. And that's okay. But I also want to talk with my summer curriculum writing team as to how we can customize these assessments, that conceptually, things are still the same, but the specific questions might be a little bit different depending on what the last several years of instruction have been in the virtual environment. So we're looking definitely to figure out how, and I do think about some of the data collecting measurements, and I've talked with Layla Watkins about, learning how to incorporate my contents so I can have a more concrete and clear view of exactly what's being assessed and understanding where we may need to revisit some of our assessments and where we may need to revisit our curriculum maps and our planning tools that we have to really get us back to where we were before the pandemic. So we also, one of the things that I'm really proud about is all the work that we've done over the last years regarding cultural proficiency and providing optional resources for our teachers that are shared. For example, I share out the Black African American History resources in February. I share out Scottish and Irish American History in March, and am clear saying you don't have to present these resources, and you certainly don't have to only provide these resources during that month. Please use them all year long. I'm doing it in support of the recognized months, the cultural months that are there. And each year I do send out a needs-based assessment to my teachers to say, what can we do better? What do we not have? How can you help me understand the amount of diversity we have here in Frederick County to be able to give those resources for you to have when you consider your planning throughout the year and throughout specified months. We continue revisiting pre-K resources and lesson needs. We don't yet have a formal board-approved pre-K curriculum for music and art. And just yesterday, I had an email conversation with Leslie Fry to help me be able to understand, and also Mr. Hitchner in health and PE, how we can best serve these young learners. Now that really almost all of our schools have full-day pre-K, We need to have a formal curriculum. We need to have resources. We need to have things there for our youngest learners. So that's a continual conversation that's ongoing to make sure that we can provide teachers with the resources that they need to be comfortable with our youngest learners, now that we're having, a more consistent instructional program for them. And the programs that we have, we consistently have the Youth Art Month show over at the Delaplane. That's every March, every year. We do have choral programs in all of our schools, and we do have honors course. So I certainly invite all of you on May 3rd at the Weinberg Center at 7 p.m. Ann DuBose, who is the daughter of Judy DuBose, who runs our Frederick children's chorus. I don't know if it's children's chorus or children's choir, but she's our conductor this year. We do have an instrumental music program that have various programs. Many of them are feeder patterns. So you could have the wonderful experience of seeing the learning continuum from 4th through 12th grade of our instrumental students. We do continue with the Weinberg, the SMART series that provide opportunities for generally elementary, sometimes middle school students to have a theater experience. And oftentimes those programs are connected with other content areas. They are musicals, they have art connections. So those happen almost monthly. I would be happy to provide any information, upcoming if you'd like to see one of them. And we do have other things for students, such as opportunities for them to engage in poster making, in competitions, in displaying artwork. I'm also happy to say that I've reached out to Country Meadows Assisted Living Facility, that we're going to have elementary student artwork displayed over the summer in their dining areas. They're super happy that I reached back out. So we do look at the elementary level to have opportunities for our students to both sing and have their artwork displayed throughout the community.
Any questions?
Just one. So for the arts and the performing arts, so the pre-K teacher will take that curriculum from you and incorporate that into the classroom, correct? So we're not providing a.
They will have art, music, and PE instruction
But
from art, music, and PE teachers.
from, okay. From
It may not be depending on the school and the schedule, it may not be the same amount of time as like the kindergarten or
Right,
first grade.
right.
But we are under the expectation that they have some time with a certified teacher. If you've ever been in a pre-K classroom, there usually is some singing and some hands-on materials from the teachers themselves.
Yeah,
But the curricular responsibilities that you're hearing there would be from our certified teachers.
okay, great. That's it. Mr. J, do you have any questions, comments?
Can you hear me okay? First question.
Yep, we can hear you.
Now we can.
Okay, great. So I love what I heard about the service to the community with the other. That carried on in high school and middle school. Do we serve some other way going forward?
Is that as far as opportunities for arts students in middle and high school to also have their work displayed in the community? Yeah, there are those opportunities as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. I was also thinking, like, in terms of like that partnership to go on to like have our students who are upper ages, we want to go in the service industry to support the kitchen. Actually, when I was a kid, I worked in the senior citizen kitchen. I would serve dinner and I would work in the kitchen area. So maybe our culinary students, some kind of connection to have that for our service-minded students, have a connection there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yep. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you both for your time.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
appreciate it.
All right. I'll switch the presentation now. Our next presentation is on the multi-tiered system of supports. We'll bring the whole group to the table here. And whoever's going to grab the slide deck, you can use the mouse there. Actually,
Oh, yeah, sorry.
that's our
Sorry, as we transition, I didn't hear the response to that. Is there a possibility for that?
Yes, I think that Dr. Cuppet had indicated, yes, there was.
I just need more details about
Yeah.
what he's indicating.
He said he'd reach out to get more details.
Awesome, thank you.
Great, so as you can see, we have our full team here. So I'm Jennifer Bringman, and I'm now the acting Associate Superintendent for Special Education Student Services, but previously the Director of System Accountability and School Improvement. And Kyle Barnett is now the Acting Director of System Accountability and School Improvement. We decided that I could have this one last opportunity to be part of the team. So I appreciate you letting me stay part of the team, because I'm so proud of this team and the great work that they've done over the years. So I think this is a great opportunity to kind of celebrate the great work. But this is, why don't you each introduce yourselves?
I'm Kelly Denty, I'm the supervisor of local assessment and intervention. I'm Brittany Garst, I'm the teacher specialist for reading intervention.
Jen Fleming, teacher specialist for math intervention.
Maggie Hawk, teacher specialist for intervention.
Thank you. So we are basically going to give an intervention update and really looking at our multi-tiered system of supports. And for this presentation, we did kind of go back to the presentation that Dr. Cuppet and I just did, because we thought we can't kind of reinforce what is a multi-tiered system of supports enough, because I think a lot of times in education, we utilize terminology that sometimes it makes sense to us, but not necessarily for others. And so we were just kind of reinforcing and hopefully helping to kind of solidify what is a multi-tiered system of supports. And really it's a framework that provides the structures and tools that are necessary to identify students, to determine what are their needs, and to really articulate clearly what the support is that we're going to be providing a student. And then the critical piece is that there's progress monitoring throughout the year. So we don't just put a student in intervention and not continue to progress monitor them. So that ongoing progress monitoring allows us to be able to adjust supports as needed and necessary, and making sure that we have a full continuum. Because not all students need a tier 3 intervention. We need to make sure that we appropriately support them no matter where they are. And so this is our graphic that we utilize to really kind of like explain our multi-tiered system of supports. The yellow tier 1 is our largest because all students receive tier 1. And it's fluid. As students move and they have needs for tier 2 and tier 3, we move them for the appropriate support that is needed and necessary for the time that's needed. And it's important to note that specially designed instruction happens throughout all tiers. And so a student who is special education doesn't have to be in tier 3. They may just need to have their support, their specially designed instruction in tier 1. But they could need to have tier 2 or tier 3. And so it really is a flexible way that we look at individual students to determine where are they struggling and how can we best support them. And again, this is a review from Dr. Cuppet and I's presentation, but core instruction happens for all students, and that's critically important, that they actually get the core for the grade level appropriate for that they're in. And really, the teacher utilizes information that they glean from formative assessment, screening assessment, and summative assessment to really determine how do we support and meet students' needs within the tier 1 instruction. Because some students do need targeted supplemental instruction. So they need a little bit more than that core instruction, and that happens in small groups or in a variety of ways that we just make sure that the student has that additional instructional piece that is needed and necessary for success. And really that's all determined through the accelerated learning process. Teachers come together as a team, and the team involves a special education teacher, EL teacher, other core teachers for that same grade level, and as well as the specialists, and they really talk about what does the instruction look like and how can we make sure that we're designing that instruction based on the evidence of learning that we have, and to really individualize and meet individual student needs. When students need additional support, then they may be placed into a tier 2, which really provides a student with prerequisite instructional standards, and it could be individual or it could be small groups, but it really is utilizing those diagnostic assessments to determine what is the targeted instructional focus that the student needs, and it's usually for a shorter period of time, but not as short as supplemental instruction, which is more regularly dependent on standards. And again, always with frequent progress monitoring, we want to make sure that instruction is always data informed, and moving through our multi-tiered system of supports is data informed. And then tier 3 is really that more intensive and sustained support, and it really is designed to support students where they're really struggling, and then again, progress monitoring. And just another note to say that specially designed instruction occurs across all of our tiers. It's not just for one tier or another.
And we really value in FCPS the collaborative structures that we have in place that sort of support this process. So at the classroom to classroom level, we have ALP as described by Jen, where our teachers would meet together and make instructional decisions based on evidence, but they would carefully be able to monitor the student progress to alert others in the building that, hey, these kids are falling through, they're not keeping up, they need to have a closer look from other professionals in the building, and that would lead us to our core teams. And the core teams are really looking within a content area, but across the whole school. And they would be monitoring students within the MTSS, taking on those requests or those alerts from teachers that, hey, we need to look at this data. And so they're making the placement and programming decisions, monitoring the evidence of learning, and then addressing student needs equitably, strategically, and with stewardship of all the students in the building. And then we have our student services team, which would be whole school, whole child. Obviously, all of the approaches are whole child. This would really look at the academic and behavior and attendance pieces all together. So that team is going to look at attendance, discipline, grades, and they have the MTSS for both academics and behavior that they would be considering all of the programs and services that are available for students. And it's a really diverse group, could include all of those that we mentioned before, the math specialists, lit specialists, but also maybe PPWs, guidance counselors, anyone that can kind of coordinate the services, school psychologists to coordinate the services that students. And then I know, Ms. Allen, last time at the board meeting, I think you'd asked about the universal screening process and exactly what information can we glean from it.
But this is great.
Well, I felt bad that I didn't feel like we answered it. I mean, I know Dr. Cuppett sent it, so we thought, we'll just include it here.
Yeah,
I was hoping that the visual would help here.
It does.
And it really, for Senate Bill 734, we have to screen K through 3, right? That's what the state mandates. But we at FCPS really value making sure that no student slips through the crack. And so our universal screening really is comprehensive K through 12. And this will show you kind of the measures at each grade level that are appropriate. And each of these measures is really specifically designed to show us our students at or above where they should be at that developmental age, at that stage of learning to read, or are they below, and how far below does it really indicate that they could be at risk for reading difficulty, and then that allows our teams to intervene. When we look at the upper grades, 4 and 5, they have the oral reading fluency, because at that point we've sort of switched from learning to read to reading to learn. And so students should be automatic enough in their decoding that their fluency, they're applying those skills and they're more fluent readers. And then we also have the iReady measure, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, but that's our new adaptive diagnostic measure that measures comprehension, but also some of the foundational reading domains. And so that would kind of alert our teachers as to when they need to intervene or look at a student. And then in grades 6 through 12, we have obviously our iReady provides sort of that first look, but then we have those other drill-in measures that are listed and more that are not here that we can use to sort of determine what's the significance of the need, how severe is it, and then what programming would be appropriate. And we did this year in high school, we did a comprehensive screening of all of our high school students. For those that took iReady, we have iReady being used, the reading portion of the test is used for select populations and courses. So those students started there, and then we looked at the scores and we worked with the team to drill down, and they would do additional measures as needed to determine need. And then we used a multiple measures approach at central office to pull data, their grades, their historical, we looked at historical intervention history, we looked at historical performance on local assessments, and then we determined which students might need follow-up testing. And so we used a variety of measures to just make sure that everyone was screened, and then we followed back up with the schools to say, okay, what were the results, what action plan do we need? So we worked collaboratively. Did you have any further questions?
Well, I just was looking, for the universal screening for reading, but do you find that students are proficient in other areas and on grade level, just not in the reading, or vice versa? So you find that, and I know personally, I love to read, do I like math? No, I really don't. But,
Well, and I
you
think
know,
that's one of the things
so-
that makes us so excited about the blueprint, because
Yeah.
we can identify a student as needing a support pathway in one area and an advanced pathway in another.
Right.
One of the focuses for our team, though, is really that early intervention for reading, because we do know that kids read across content areas. So we have to close those deficits, because it will begin, even if they have, if they're gifted in other areas, the literacy really will impact those other areas. So we do try to focus on early intervention while still giving them opportunities for advanced coursework.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for providing that information.
Oh, you're welcome. And then we wanted to show you a little bit about what we have to offer at each level within the MTSS. So I'll turn it over to Brittany.
So this is a graphic that represents the interventions that we have available at elementary, and then the next one will be secondary. And essentially, the interventions that we have are all existent on a sliding scale of intensity based on the student need. So after giving the universal screening assessments at every level, if students indicate that they may have a reading need, we then administer diagnostic assessments to determine what is their need and what is the scope of their need and how intensive do we need to be with their intervention. So we always want to try the least restrictive option first. So we begin with the tier 1 support in the classroom, but if they demonstrate that they have further need, we can move kind of up the scale to some accelerated programming that we have, and then more intensive programming that takes a longer time. And really, we try to place students in the programs very specifically based on those diagnostic assessments for the very specific skills that they need to work on. And so, one of the things that we discuss is that foundational skills always need to come before comprehension, because you can't comprehend what you can't read. And so we have worked over the last few years to have schools sort of shift their thinking, where when we have students that demonstrate need in foundational skills, we need to get them in an intervention for that as soon as possible so that they can close that gap and be able to decode the words on the page. And once we get to that point, if they demonstrate a further need for comprehension skills, we would then place them into a comprehension intervention. So this is elementary.
Can I just say, as you see on that for the comprehension piece, you'll see that it does have LLI / exploring reading. And we kept LLI as part of our intervention continuum because it is a solid intervention for comprehension. However, we do hear from our advocates that there are some concerns with utilizing LLI. And so we were at a point previously where we needed to provide more training and making sure that our schools have enough of the exploring reading materials. And now that we are in a place where the training has occurred and they have the materials, LLI will be coming off of our continuum of comprehension interventions starting next year. And so next year, if the student needs comprehension intervention, we'll be encouraging school teams to enroll them in exploring reading as the intervention that is most effective for meeting the needs of our students who have comprehension needs.
And the primary reason why exploring reading is far superior to LLI is that LLI would take a student and they would drop the level of instruction to where the student is currently reading, whereas exploring reading really exposes them to grade level text and then scaffolds and supports up. So it has kids kind of reaching for where they should be. And so that's why we're moving in that direction.
And that's much more aligned to the science of reading and what the research tells us about how students learn to read. And it also is more aligned with the blueprint. And so another one of those elements is that because they're working on grade level content, they won't fall as far behind because they're not working with that very low content that's right on their level. And I know that one of the concerns that schools had in the past, and this was many years ago, was that students weren't quite ready to read the text that was on grade level. But part of that reason is because they actually needed instruction in decoding and not in comprehension yet. They weren't ready for the comprehension instruction. And so once our students have met the standard and the benchmark for their decoding skills, they are ready and they can read grade level content. They just need support comprehending it.
A lot of this hard professional learning and helping to onboard it. So that's what we've been doing.
So we have a very similar structure at secondary. We do have 2 different comprehension programs at secondary. We use Read 180 with our middle schoolers and Achieve 3000 with high school. We have far fewer students enrolled in foundational skills intervention as we move up the scale, because hopefully they will master those skills earlier and then be able to be enrolled in a comprehension program if they demonstrate that need. But all of our programs also offer support for students in writing at the point where they need that support. whether that would be through transcription or spelling in some of our foundational skills programs, and then moving towards actually constructing a response and doing some longer form writing in our comprehension programs. So students who need more of the occupational therapy level support in writing receive that from an occupational therapist, but if it's more about their ability to write informed thoughts, we really focus on that in our comprehension interventions as well.
I think the nice thing about today is that this evening, Oakdale Middle School, their team is coming to talk specifically about their structured literacy interventions and the success. So tonight, during the board meeting, you'll actually be able to hear from the school team and the success that they've had with students in structured literacy interventions.
And then we're going to shift gears to math, so Jen can take it away. So in math, you can see here all of the different programs that we have at the elementary level, as well as at the middle and high school courses that we have, because at the middle and high school level, they are course-based in their schedules. At the elementary level, we have 4 programs that we use: Math Navigator, Do the Math, Number Worlds, and Connecting Math Concepts. And the school teams, through their ALP process and through their core teams, will look at the student, the whole student, their progress within the classroom, their benchmarks, their iReady scores, the anecdotal evidence that they have from the student. And after exhausting all of their Tier 1 supports, their supplemental instruction, they will determine what program will best meet the needs of the students. Math Navigator and Do the Math both go up through 5th grade content, but the programs have differing instructional techniques. So that's where we look at the whole student and determine where is their greatest area of need. Number Worlds is primarily a K-1 program to really focus in on those early numeracy skills. It's also more intense in its length for our students. And Connecting Math Concepts is our most intensive program that we use with our students. It starts with identifying the number and how to write the number. So that's one of our earliest and most intense interventions. At the middle and high school level, students can be enrolled in a math workshop class, which is in addition to their core math class. So they have 2 classes of math throughout the school day. And those focus on prerequisite skills in an effort to accelerate the student to meet the core content within their grade level classrooms. Algebra 1 Acquisitions is a algebra credit-based course that we are currently offering to students, and they are receiving the algebra content in addition to receiving prerequisite skills just in time to access that algebra content. At all 3 levels, we also have individualized intervention plans to offer our students that may not necessarily fit into one of these programs or courses a more individualized way of accessing their needs. And then we wanted to talk to you a little bit about our evidence of effectiveness in our programs. Did you want to start with math? Sure. So in math, at all 3 levels, we used iReady this year. And the iReady assessment assesses students in 4 domains: number and operations, algebra and algebraic thinking, data and measurement, as well as geometry. And so you can see here that at grades 1 through 5, the percent of students that are currently enrolled in intervention are making tremendous gains in growth. That's 75, almost 76% of students. And our middle school students, as well as our high school students, are making growth, just not quite as much as we would like to see. But we also know that these students that, as they continue, have been students that have a long history of having difficulty with math. And so they have been struggling the most and continue to struggle. And so we really made some gains early on, exited some students from intervention, and our numbers continue to go down as we progress.
And it's important to note that these are only the students that are enrolled in math intervention.
Yeah.
So it's a smaller number of students, and so of course percentages can then be impacted by a couple of students when you have that smaller numbers. And so of course that's something.
And I think roughly we're looking at about what we said, 14% of students in elementary schools are enrolled in an intervention, whereas by the time we get to high school, it may be like 3%.
Yeah.
So it really is.
Great. Yeah.
And we obviously we're focused on early intervention. And it can look like we're sort of getting diminishing returns, but we also know that some of these students have the most profound learning needs. And so we're working to meet them where they are and intervene as needed with the intensity.
And particularly at high school, we see that many of those students have been in intervention for a long time. And as the numbers get smaller, it becomes the students, like Kelly said, that have the greatest need.
And that's why we're continuing looking at our intervention offerings to make sure that we have what the students need, because like we want to make sure that the student is in the right intervention. So that's what we're continuing to do.
And I would imagine that as you're getting into the 6th through the 12th, that the curriculum is a little tougher.
It
More
is.
challenging.
The same for the assessment. So, not only is it a new test, and we know that there were inconsistent administrations of it, especially at high school, but what was reported to us through the District Committee on Assessment was really just the level of stamina required, especially coming out of the pandemic for students. Some of those items are very challenging at grade level, and it is an adaptive test. So iReady does go below grade level as needed, but we really want to work on trying to make sure that we have the most accurate data next year as possible. So it's part of our professional learning plan to make sure that they're administering it with best practices in mind, that they understand the purpose of the assessment, how the data is used, and hopefully we'll feel that we have really accurate results next year.
And also at the high school level, being that the students are enrolled in algebra, but iReady assesses also geometry, measurement, and data. Students aren't being instructed in those domains during that course. So when they see that content on the assessment, they may not have seen that content for quite some time.
Oh, that's interesting.
And that feedback was also presented in the District Committee on Assessment. So we're sorting through all of that right now as we build out the local assessment calendar for next year to take that into account. And so we'll try to make sure that we're responding to the feedback.
Yeah.
So then when we look at the reading data, I know that we've kind of been going back and forth, but one thing that I think that this data really speaks to is the effectiveness of early intervention. Our K through 3 students show 100% of them show growth on our DIBELS assessment, which measures foundational skills, which I really feel speaks to just how well the programs at that level are being implemented and how quickly we're catching students that have needs. And we're constantly working on a cycle of placing them into intervention when they need it at the right time, and then allowing them to exit and return to Tier 1 instruction when they are ready. Because the Tier 1 supports that we have, particularly at the elementary level, are very strong. And so that's really kind of what we've been working with schools on, and you can see from the data that it has been going really well. And like Jen mentioned and Kelly mentioned, our numbers of students in intervention as you move up through the levels are much smaller. And so I think that accounts for some of the scores in the high school and the middle school level, but also, at those levels, sometimes motivation can become a factor when students have been in intervention for a very long time, and they sort of start to feel, a little defeated. And so I really think that, again, this just speaks to how important it is to make sure that we get them in the right intervention as early as possible so that we can move them out and they don't continue to fall behind.
Did you want to speak to foundational skills?
They already said that. I do want to highlight the one that starts at the bottom in the middle where it says 69% of students in language foundations and Gordon Gillingham Plus above lesson 40. So in language foundations, we have 125 lessons. And in OG Plus, they have a substantial amount of lessons too. So you're just talking the basic lessons that they have been taught, that already being taught those skills, they are already at a 69% of being able to make growth. So they are being put in the program that they need to be in. And so just like they said, for our students in 6th through 8th and 9th through 12th, they are working on their foundational skills, that the test that they are being given is skills that it's taking longer for us to remediate these students. So it's going to take a long time. Hence what Brittany and I have been talking about with schools is making sure you're identifying these students as soon as possible, because the longer we wait, the longer it takes to remediate the student.
And that's where the other assessments come into play. Because this is our kind of like check on our systemic level as to how students are performing and giving that. But then there's another layer of assessments that the students use, the teachers utilize with the students to kind of progress monitor, and the programs actually have assessments within. And so they're evaluating, are the students progressing within the intervention? And so it helps to make sure that they are moving forward. And so it's other assessments that help that piece.
And then just one other comment that I wanted to make is that, some of the ways that we're continuing to support our core literacy teams, this team that you're looking at right here, these teacher specialists, they have been meeting with principals, school teams, they go out, they do observations, they coach, they support, they continuously analyze data and alert schools. If they haven't caught something, we try to catch it and work through it with them. And so we are a small team, but we're mighty, and I'm so proud of them and the work that they do. So I just had to share. Do you have any other questions for us?
I do not. Mr. J, do you have questions?
I do. Thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for presenting today. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to ask, I'm sure you have it, but I wanted to ask about what support you have in place currently for students with dysgraphia.
Do you want to reiterate what we talked? So students with dysgraphia.
I'm sorry.
He said,
what do we have in place for students with dysgraphia?
So there are two types of students that with dysgraphia, Mr. J, is that they have either, they're going to look at more of an occupational therapist because they have the tactile piece that they need to work on. The other piece is what we've found is typically you're going to find students that are dysgraphic. You're also going to see that they have dyslexia as well. And so what you're working on is that fine motor piece, and you're working on the spelling piece, and that's within both of our programs. So different but similar. So in Language Foundations, we have the cursive piece, which has proven to show that students with dysgraphia, it's very beneficial for them because it's a constant motion instead of a stop-start position that you're using it with just regular print. We also have spelling rules that we're teaching the kids specifically why words are spelled that way and how you determine, because you're looking at, for example, in Language Foundations, every day the students go through a spelling deck and they have to recite all the different spelling patterns, and how those spelling patterns are determined is that someone very famous has gone through and professionally found the percentage of how many of those words are spelled with that spelling pattern, and that's how we're teaching those students those skills.
Does that help?
It does, thank you. I just remember I had a student with dysgraphia. He understood everything. He could read, and he could teach the lesson better than most kids in the classroom, but he could not translate his knowledge to paper. So I looked at the presentation. I saw the work on dyslexia. I'm great for that. So work on the reading connections and math. I was looking for dysgraphia. So I'm glad you had that. I'm sure you did. I just wanted to get that out there. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mason, just to add to that, when they moved to that, I'm sorry, Johnson, I'm sorry. When they moved to that level where their struggle is getting their thoughts onto paper, we actually have really strong supports at secondary, particularly in Read 180 and Achieve 3000, for how to construct a paragraph and how to construct a sentence. And we provide a lot of sentence frames and support for them, kind of having those scaffolds so that rather than having the frustration of having the thought and not really knowing how to put it onto paper and how to communicate that in writing, we provide them the opportunity where we've sort of already started the sentence for them and given them the space to place their thoughts into it so that they don't quite feel so frustrated when they're working.
And that's good. In Language Foundations, we're teaching the actual grammar piece on how to build a sentence and what a sentence going from the bare basic sentence all the way to a complete sentence.
Any other questions?
I'm good right now. Anybody else have anything else, Mr. J?
Good. So thank you all
Thanks.
for being here. You're free to run the planet.
Thank
We're going to
you.
finish up with some business. We talked about revisiting the minutes, I believe.
So, Mr. J, can you hear us okay?
I can.
Okay. So yeah. Sorry, I didn't catch that last bit. I was talking
I
over you.
have to get off, so I want to thank everybody for sharing today.
the last thing we had were just the meeting minutes, the review of the minutes, and if there were any
Suggested changes? Yeah.
any suggested changes, anything that you had comments on for the meeting minutes?
Nothing at all.
Okay, great. All right. And you jumping off?
Yes, I'll see you tonight. Thank you
Okay,
all.
thanks.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
So then for the next meeting, we have mathematics updates. Yep, it's coming very quickly. This is the way the schedule is. So we have that, and then in June, English learners will be here. Dr. Gall and her team will be here to present. Mr. Watson in the virtual school, we can update on that. And then Scott will be bringing district committee on assessments. We have / Bingman, but we'll be relieving her of that duty. And so Mr. Murphy will take the lead on our district committee on our assessments. That's the one that's required under legislation. The way we work with stakeholders, parents, teachers, administrators to look at our assessment program that we do locally. So that'll be an update for the CNI committee at that point. The one question we were going to ask if you and Ms. Yoho and Mr. Johnson could have a discussion around whether you're going to do a July meeting.
Okay.
Sometimes previous committees have taken the opportunity to join summer curriculum workshops to see that work happening rather than have a meeting. We don't have a pressing agenda item that we think could not wait until August.
Okay.
So if you could talk as a group and decide whether you want to move forward and inform Ms. Rich whether you want to have a July meeting, we could certainly go find a topic for you or pull something up sooner if you felt that you wanted to meet, but that will leave that up to the committee.
Well, let's see if I can use my persuasive powers
Okay.
to
It's,
to
yeah.
to just follow through with the schedule. And
And
we'll
we'd
meet
be
in
happy to
August.
provide the schedule for the summer curriculum workshops. Will actually occur in the last 2 weeks of June, the first week of July. So there would be an opportunity that board members could see some in-person curriculum work going on, which is a lot of the work that drives the reporting that you hear back.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Anything else?
I don't have anything.
You get the close the
Meeting
gavel.
adjourned.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.